Hi guys, my name is Morgan Clark and I'm going to be doing my project on Ansel Adams. As you can see here, this is a picture of him himself. And this quote by Jimmy Carter really defines exactly what Ansel Adams is. He did a lot of work with Yosemite and preserving it, and I think it's really interesting here that President Jimmy Carter says that he's regarded by environmentalists as a monument himself. So, Ansel Adams was born in 1902 in San Francisco. He was born into a family that was pretty wealthy, but they actually lost most of their fortunes from the big San Francisco earthquake in 1906. He was an only child and lived a normal childhood, but his dad realized that he wasn't really fitting in school, so he started to homeschool him. At the age of 14, he became interested in Yosemite after reading James Mason Hutchings' book In the Heart of the Sierras. And his first job was actually a photo technician for a commercial firm, which then sparked his passion for photography. He very first started shooting pictures on his Kodak Brownie camera. And on his first trip to Yosemite, which was actually a family vacation, he started snapping pictures that basically triggered his career. He began getting really involved in Yosemite's National Park. He joined the Sierra Club, which helped preserve the national park, and spent summers accompanying High Sierra tour groups. And he was also a caretaker of the Sierra Club's LeConte Memorial Lodge in Yosemite Valley. His first pictures were shown in the Sierra Club Bulletin. This is kind of where he stopped doing everything else. He once wanted to be a classical pianist, but he gave that up to focus on his passion for photography. Throughout his life, he worked as a commercial photographer, usually for the National Park Services to preserve the national parks, but he also worked for companies such as Kodak, Zeiss, IBM, AT&T, and Life and Fortune magazines. In 1920, he was experimenting with soft focuses, although he didn't practice hand coloring, which was big at the time. But his main thing was that he used different lenses to capture his pictures. He then later went on to go on to his more famous focus pictures. In 1930, his Taos Pueblo collection was published. He was inspired from Stieglitz's Circle in New Mexico with Georgia O'Keeffe and Paul Strand. It was said that Paul Strand was the one who encouraged Adams to change from his softer pictures to more detailed and focused photography. We now know this as straight photography, and Ansel Adams basically practiced straight photography for the rest of his career. He was a part of the group F64 with Edward Weston and Imogen Cunningham, and the F64 represented the aperture setting that allowed for maximum clarity, sharpness, and allowed for the greatest depth of field. And we all know that this group was the group that changed the thinking of photography. It allowed photography to be accepted as a fine art, and people really started to agree with that and started to look at it as an art. In 1933, he opened his own museum exhibition at the Smithsonian Institution, and in 1936, Alfred Stieglitz let him have a one-man show in his New York gallery. But after that, he moved to Yosemite Valley in 1937 and began working on his Yosemite pictures and publishing a lot of volumes that included the Illustrated Guide to Yosemite Valley, My Camera in Yosemite Valley, basically just all of his Yosemite pictures. And he really wanted to focus on getting people to acknowledge all of the wildlife protection. When he was working in Yosemite, he started to come up with this idea of the zone system. It allowed for a photographer to visualize the finished print by comparing light intensities with a chart showing an ascending scale of black and white tones. This idea made most of the work happen before he even took the picture. So the bulk of the work happened before he even took that picture. But he did do a lot of darkroom edits as well. His original pictures look nothing like his finished projects. He died on April 22nd in 1984 in Monterey, California, but shortly after, the Minarets Wilderness south of Yosemite National Park was renamed the Ansel Adams Wilderness. And here we're going to start looking at pictures. This is one of his most famous and one of his very beginning pictures. This was featured in his first portfolio, the Parmelian Prince of the High Sierras. And because this picture did so good, he gave up his other dream of being a classical pianist and started to focus on being a photographer and using this to start his career. This is another picture in Yosemite. And the Philadelphia Museum of Art said that he knew every vantage point of Yosemite intimately. So he really just knew what kind of pictures he wanted to take and just had to wait for the right lighting and the right time. And this picture is a little different than his other Yosemite pictures, but I like it because it shows a different side of him. It's a zoomed in picture of a rose, and it's very simple, but kind of different and beautiful in its own way. And here's another picture of the Yosemite. And this picture is pretty interesting because, as I said earlier, he was really inspired by Stieglitz's circle in New Mexico with Georgia O'Keeffe. And this is actually a picture of her with Orville Cox. So I think that's pretty cool. And this picture here, he made this when he went through the High Sierras with Edward Weston, actually. And this is one of his, pretty much his only still life image. He set up this picture, he set up these flowers in this way. And here's a picture of the Old Faithful geyser in Yellowstone. And this just shows that he actually didn't just work on the national park in Yosemite, but he worked on other ones as well. This picture is a little different because it's a zoomed in picture like the rose picture as well. And this picture here is another picture in New Mexico, and he was having a pretty bad day. He couldn't get any pictures until he just came across the cemetery and had to take a picture of it. This was about a year before he started his zone system, so it's pretty apparent that he really thought about all of the tones in his pictures, the black and the whites, before he even came up with this idea of the zone system. And this is the Tetons. This is one of his most famous pictures, just because of the beauty and the different colors that he shows here. This is another one of his Taos Pueblo pictures. The Sierra Nevada. And this picture here is a little different. This was during World War III, actually, and he did not enlist in World War III, but he wanted to make some kind of a contribution. And Ralph Merritt urged him to go document Japanese Americans. And this picture was taken on one of his visits. He set up his camera on top of his car, actually, to take this picture and to get the vantage point of all of the rocks in front and to really show the depth of field in this picture. And this is some more of his National Park Yellowstone or Yosemite pictures. And the last two pictures I'm going to show you are a little different, and they're kind of cool. They're not your average Ansel Adams pictures, but I think it's cool to see that he did take other random pictures that really show kind of his artistic side of photography. So as you can tell, Ansel has been a photographer since the very beginning. He began as a young child and he never gave it up. And with all of his work documenting Yosemite to keep its preservation and his work with the group F64, he really made an impact on the street photography life. A lot of people were inspired by him and really looked for him for inspiration for their street photography. He also started the zone system, which many photographers use and continue to use, but I think that his main significance was the work that he did for the Yosemite preservation. He really did everything that he could do to show the significance of the Yosemite and to really get people to see the beauty in just an everyday national park that you really wouldn't think about unless you saw how beautiful that this area was. And I'm going to end with a quote that he said, and he says, "I hope that my work will encourage self-expression in others and stimulate the search for beauty and creative excitement in the great world around us." Thanks for watching.